My mom had breast cancer quite a few years ago, and I happened to be at home the night before she was going to have her surgery the next day. She was leaving at, I don't remember, I think it was 5:30 in the morning. And she sat me down and she said, "Now, Steve, my family's going to be here. There's going to be lots of family here, and there's going to be people taking care of me and a lot of things going on. But now, Steve, I want you to promise me something. I want you to be there as they roll me into the operating room, and I want you to be there when I'm on my way out." And I said, "Oh, Mom, of course. I'm a mama's boy. You know I'll be there for you. Of course I'll be there." About 15 or 20 minutes into the evening that I thought was extremely boring, I said, "Oh, well, let me go to the store real quick. I need to get a Coke." Mom says, "Oh, we got some Coke in there." So I went in and I drank a Coke, and I said, I found that we didn't have any Dr. Pepper, and I said, "Well, I want to go get a Dr. Pepper now." So it was my excuse to leave. Well, it was just enough time for me to go to the dope man's house, smoke a $20 crack rock, and as I was on my way home, I said, "You know what? I think I'll just turn around and go back. I'm already out, might as well just go back." So I ended up going back 2 times. 3 times, 4 times. I ended up hooking up with the guy that straight across the driveway from us. We lived in an apartment at that time on the lower level, and this guy lived in the second level up on top up there, and I ended up hooking up with him. So I pulled my car around on the other side of the apartment complex, and we were up there smoking crack. And it came bedtime, you know, and I wasn't back. And my mom was sitting there in the rocking chair, and we had these, I believe they're called Venetian blinds. They're the vertical ones, go up and down. And, you know, you can close them, you know, back and forth this way, or you can twist them. Well, they were closed all the way, but they were twisted open. And I could look from that second story, I could look down and I could see my mother in there rocking in her rocking chair. And as it got a little later, she turned the TV off. And about every 30 minutes, she would open up those blinds and she would peek her head out to see if my car was in the driveway. The TV went off after just a little while, and then my mother started peeking her head out the window. She would open up the sliding glass door and she would look out both sides and look for my car coming, and Steve wasn't coming home. I was watching her. Whew. From the second story of that apartment complex. It got later and later and later, and I saw my mother. She'd turn around backwards, and she'd get on her knees like this, and she'd start praying on her chair, and she'd get up and she'd look out the window. And finally, I don't remember what time it was early in the morning, and I remember seeing her walking out in her nightgown, walking out in the parking lot, and it was cold that night. Walking out in the parking lot, looking down each side, just hoping to see some headlights flashing around the corner, thinking it was going to be me. And I'm here to tell you, I was so miserable in that room smoking crack that night because I knew what my mother was going through, and I knew that she needed me to be there at that point and at that time. And I was so drawn by the pull of that dope that I literally could not let it go. I'd take a hit and I'd run halfway down the stairs, and then I'd go back up and I'd take a hit and I'd look out there and I'd see Mom and I'd cry within myself, but I was numb at the same time. And I'd go halfway downstairs and I'd come back up and back and forth until finally I went out there. And when I did, I went to the door, and my dad was right behind the door, and he was telling Mom to come on, let's go. And I put my hand on the knob just about the time I heard him right beyond the door, and he was going to open up that door, and I was in no shape to face my father. So I took off and ran, and they never even knew I was there. While they were gone to the hospital, I broke in the house. I got in the house, and I stole everything they had. I've said that to tell you, parents, please, whatever you do, don't you ever give up on your children. I remember literally tripping over my mother at 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to sneak out the door to go get some more dope. She was on her face praying for her son. Whew. I remember my dad, I would sneak in. I call myself sneaking in. You know, they knew more than I thought they knew. I called myself sneaking in at just 15, 20 minutes before I knew they were going to get up in the morning. And I'd stay out all night and I'd smoke dope, and then I'd come home and just slide in. And I'll tell you, at numerous occasions, I would lay in my bed and I would hear my dad and my mother having their devotions over the breakfast table. And I would hear my dad call out my name specifically to God and say, God, you get my son. He's my child and he's Delma's child, but most of all, he's your child. Now you get him, God. You do what you've got to do to get my son back. And boy, I want you to know that I laid in my bed time after time, night after night, and my heart just ripped open when I'd hear my dad cry that prayer for me. Whew. Parents, don't you dare give up on your kids.